All right, everybody. It's Magic Prepper. If you can see me and you can hear me, let me know. We're trying something a little different tonight when it comes to the way I had YouTube and StreamYard talk to each other. So let's see if this goes well. But at the end of the day, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I'm on my way to trying to make these Monday nights a little bit more enjoyable. So, and I can appreciate that all of you are here to run through these experiments with me. So you can see me, you can hear me. Tell me. And if not, then I'm a little confused as to what's going on because this thing should be started already, if you ask me. Give me 1 second. It should be alive. I'm telling you guys it's alive. Okay. Let's get into it, I promise. Well, now it's just being rude. Okay. Not 5x5, everyone says. Okay, well, let's see what I can figure out here and why this is not working the way it's supposed to. Give me 1 second. Okay. All right. It's showing me that we're live. Are we actually live? That's a big question. From what I can see, it doesn't look like it. All right. So I must be in a weird lag of some kind because I'm seeing some things right now saying 5x5, but if I was to look at YouTube's actual page right now, then it's just not looking good. So I guess I'm in the studio. I guess we're making moves now. So either way, okay, I tried something different tonight. Maybe it wasn't the best idea because, I don't like change. And here we are with a new format, and it doesn't look like it's working on some things, and it's not working on my screen for YouTube, but it's working for you all, I guess. So that's a good thing. All right. Now, I guess this is where it's at. Let me get rid of that. Come over here, hang out with you guys in the new live studio, they're calling it. Welcome. So tonight is about prepping will become impossible. And that's something I wanted to talk about because it is something that we have to consider. Now, I'm not saying it's going to become impossible because, people are going to make it illegal or because it's going to be one of those things that, we just aren't able to do because of this or that. But it'll become impossible based on two different events or factors that we have to pay attention to right now and consider as being possibilities for us here in the future. Glad you guys are all here. Thank you so much. Someone said 2x4. So I'm hoping that means things are maybe a little bit more clear. Is the clarity good? Is the audio good? I'm trying something different. I'm not sure if it's even working, but I realized maybe a little bit too last minute that I wasn't going to be able to do the things I want to do, trying to do the thing I set up. So let's see here. And I will say, good to see you all here in the chat. Glad we can hang out. Let's talk about what's going on here, okay? And yeah, the hair. I know it's getting intense. So 11B infantry, follow me, U.S. Army 96 through 14. I have let it go quite a bit. Now, there will be a deadline where it will be cut off. But now I'm slightly concerned about cutting it off because of how many people will be freaked out by the fact that I suddenly cut my hair. And that we all know that's what I'll do right before SHTF. So refresh the screen. YouTube was giving me a weird little bit of trouble tonight. So we're gonna try this out. Now, what am I talking about? What's going on in the world? Why is prepping possibly going to be impossible? And that is something we have to discuss. So let's go ahead and talk about the first item of the night. And just so you guys are aware, one of the things I tried to do was improve the picture quality and the sound quality by going directly through YouTube. But then I found out maybe too late in the game that I wasn't going to be able to screen share using that service solely. So I had to go back through, make YouTube and StreamYard communicate, and now here we are. So I apologize for the delay in the beginning. Thanks for sticking around and waiting for this whole thing to go down. These Monday nights are extremely beneficial. And if you're here for the first time, make sure you network with people in the chat and make sure you join the Discord so you can meet other like-minded people who are trying their best to figure out, what's going on in the world. Now, here's what's going on, okay? We are facing a situation where obviously there's a lot of I guess the best way to say it is disdain towards what's happening over in Eastern Europe. And of course, what I'm concerned about when it comes to this, obviously, we're hearing a lot of stories, and everything has to be vetted or at least taken with a grain of salt just because of the way media works during these conflicts. It's hard to take everything at face value. That being said, regardless of the reasons behind the scenario at hand, and regardless of the people who are involved or the people who are making decisions that are pushing this world into the situation it's currently in, there are definitely innocent people who are suffering due to these actions and due to what's happening there. So we have to keep that in mind, regardless of right or wrong in the sense of, why all this started or who did what or anything along those lines. This has to apply to you as well in your preparedness, that whether the powers that be make these decisions or do these things doesn't matter when it affects you directly and changes your life forever and takes people away from you that you love or whatever else it's going to be. And that's why we need to prepare, because obviously the governments of the world don't necessarily have us little guys' best interests in mind. And obviously the global outcry is there and everything's escalating against what's happening over there, and everyone wants to do something, right? And this concerns me because we know that there is a lot of push for more action, and the more action there is, the more likely we'll see something very bad happen. And when I say something very bad, I guess what I'm referring to mostly is just a situation involving global catastrophe. And something very bad is any involvement with major superpowers and conflict. So keep that in mind. I'm a little concerned about that situation just because I don't want to see that escalation push us into that point. Now, what does this have to do with making prepping impossible? Well, let's get to that, okay? So one of the things you have to keep in mind is this is all happening, right? And the people there are being affected by this, like right now. They're in a very difficult situation, and they are clearly having things taken from them that they definitely should not be taken. So that being said, why are we talking about prepping becoming impossible? Well, here's one of the key factors of tonight. Make sure you guys stick around because we'll talk about both factors here throughout the conversation tonight. And the secondary factor is more likely to affect us directly here in countries like the United States or maybe like the UK or Canada, depending on where you're from. But this all kind of comes down to the fact of why this could become impossible for us, okay? Now, what's happening over there to the basic average person is what really should concern us all, I guess, in regards to the current situation, okay? We are in a scenario where we're watching a terrible situation unfold in a very modernized country, and the people there are still trying to maintain some semblancy of normal life. And the issue with that is that you have people trying to go to school. So right here in this article, it talks about how kids are still going to school. Many of them are remote learning, probably from their home or wherever else they might be. But some schools are still open, and they're trying to keep children moving forward in education. They said that some of the kids are like in different parts of Europe or wherever they may be, but they're still trying to make this work. Now, here's some other things you have to keep in mind, okay? First off, they're trying to say that all the main supermarkets are still open there, and there's no significant shortage of food. There's no hour-long waits at gas stations, the way it was when everyone thought they should fill up the tank just in case they had to leave in a hurry, right? So here's something I want you to consider and keep in mind based on what we know, especially about this current situation, okay? Any giant conflict is going to create big issues when it comes to grocery stores and when it comes to gasoline and everything else related to it. Yet here they are trying to tell us that there's actually not that much of an issue. The thing that's not being considered here is the mass exodus of people who left the area due to what's happening there. And now those people have left the area to the point where literally we're finding a situation where there's enough food and there are no lines at the gas station. I would have to assume that when millions of people leave a certain area, that things like that tend to remain a little bit longer than otherwise would have happened. That being said, I also feel that there's a lot of downplaying going on here about the effects of what's happening there on daily life of normal people, especially when it comes to food and stuff. If you try to convince me right now that I can go to a store here in my town and find empty shelves in that grocery store, but that I can find full shelves or no significant shortage of food in the middle of that conflict zone, I'm going to have a very hard time believing you. So these are things we have to keep in mind that come out. And honestly, these are things that we have to expect if we were ever to see a crisis like this occur in our area. Now, one of the things that this brought to my attention, okay, and it's all about, like, all the people with their water, their electricity, their heating, it's all still being supplied to their homes. But pharmacies, banks, courier companies, they're all basically gone. So you have to understand, these people, at the minimum, especially if we aren't able to guarantee that some of this information is true when it comes to, like, the supermarket still having food and whatnot. But at the minimum, they still can't get medicine, they can't get cash or anything out of their banks, and courier companies aren't making any deliveries at all. That, to me, should tell you that in the situation they find themselves in right now, even though it's a major city that is still trying to move forward with normal life, regardless of the situation happening to them right now, they are still unable to continually prepare. If we suddenly didn't have access to additional pharmaceuticals, or the ability to spend money, or the ability to get deliveries from said companies, we would find ourselves in a very bad situation. And keep in mind that these courier companies are not working the way they're supposed to, and yet somehow there's no significant food shortage at the grocery store. So those are all things to keep in mind as well. But what I want to say is that they're showing us right now what life is like under a true SHTF scenario, where people are finding themselves in a very dangerous situation, and proving to you, once that time comes, once that scenario unfolds, once it becomes reality, you do not have time to keep prepping, and you will not be able to prepare. Now, you can argue that you can always mentally prep, right? You can always maybe learn new skills, or read more books on knowledge, or find information or suggestions from others that can help you learn. But at the end of the day, when it comes to prepping supplies and prepping the ability to extend your amount of survival based on what you have stocked, that becomes impossible during that time. Once that all happens the way it's happening to those people right now, they're no longer prepping. They're now surviving. And once that transition occurs, surviving bites into your prepping. You now have just basically spent your prepping into that survival, and you're now using that cachet, using those systems, using those stockpiles. Bug Out Adventure says, how is this all funded? Are these people still paying bills? That's a great question. And you know what? One thing I will say is that when there are bills to be paid and someone is there to collect them, those bills will always be collected. So I assume the financial entities out there that are owed money are figuring out ways to receive it one way or the other. I think we all know how that works. Now, this is just the first example of all of this happening, okay? Now we're going to talk about some other things going on around the world right now, and we're going to move into some stuff like pretty close to home to get a really good idea about some of this other stuff. And I'm trying to make sure that nothing is loud. If you guys can hear another site or anything, playing in the background, make sure you let me know, because I am trying my best not to have any interruptions. So let's talk about other things, okay? And when I say that, it's because things are getting interesting. Now, we're going to talk about this in tomorrow's video just a little bit. And tomorrow's video is just a little bit more direct and to the point about this specific topic. But I want you guys to be aware of it. And I think, since you're here at the live stream, you deserve to have this information a little bit ahead of time, because we can make exceptions here. Don't worry. I am no fan of keeping anybody out of the information that they can find useful. So this is what's happening now. You've probably heard this on other preparedness channels, but we need to talk about it anyway, okay? Basically, what we're finding is that in Germany, they're expecting coming this Monday to have a price increase on their groceries of up to 20 to 50%. That is a huge increase. That's an increase that can literally break somebody's financial stability. And they are just telling us all that this is happening. And of course, they're talking about how, everything happening east of Germany is causing a big part of this problem. Aldi raised the prices of about 160 items, and a week later, 20 more items will be more expensive, okay, or did become more expensive. And of course, this is going to keep going and going and going. Nothing is indicating that this is just going to stop. And I think that we've all talked about some of those things in the past, where we are told one thing and then another a week later, right? So they're raising prices by 20 to 50% in Germany. And obviously, there's a lot of reasons behind that. But to expect those prices to ever correct, even if everything went back to a full time of peace, they will likely never go back 20 or 50% less than they are right this second. So keep in mind that this is just another push towards everything becoming more expensive. Meat and butter will be significantly more expensive, which I don't know about you, but butter for me has been very expensive over the last few months. I was surprised when I bought some recently, found it on sale, stocked up, because I don't know, man. You just need butter sometimes, but it is getting expensive. Now, what they're saying is that there's no food shortages on the horizon, okay? Now, I want you guys to keep these things in mind. This is a big part of this conversation today, and the video tomorrow will have some other information we won't go over tonight in it about a lot of this stuff, though. And this is stuff I really want you guys to consider. Okay, prices are going up 20 to 50%, but there's no food shortages on the horizon. Though price increases are a worry for Germany's hard-hit consumers, industry experts don't expect there to be a lack of products on the shelves anytime soon. Well, that's a really pleasant thought. So basically, you're going to charge everyone 20 to 50% more for food that there's supposedly not a shortage of. So supply and demand doesn't really add up when it comes to that now, does it? Here's what you have to understand. And this is where I wanted to really dig into this, right? According to Joachim Ruquide, I want to say is probably how you say it. Not 100% sure on that, but I tried anyway. President of the Farming Association. The food supply in Germany is assured for at least another year, though after this, the forecasts are less certain. So explain to me how you don't expect there to be a lack of products on the shelves anytime soon, but your food supply is only possibly going to last another year. And after the forecast, things are a little less certain. That is exactly what we're having handed to us on a daily basis right now, especially from the media, is this back and forth of there's no shortages, but prices are going up 20 to 50% just because, not because of supply, but only because of demand. And, oh, by the way, there won't be any food shortages. Well, at least for a year. But after that, we're not really sure. Okay, that should concern you. A year is not a very long time. And if there is only enough food to get through for a year for an entire nation, that has me concerned. So I think that you guys should definitely be looking at this with a side eye of skepticism as well as concern for the fact that this whole crisis is going to keep moving forward. And this will all culminate, I promise you, into the point of why prepping will become impossible, okay? Let's see. Kim's rural life. He thinks I'm nuts. I'm as prepared as can be. And that's great. Look, honestly, I want everyone to be as prepared as they can be, no matter how crazy you might appear to those around you, because that is what's going to be required for us to get through some of these challenging times that are very, very close. That's my personal opinion and feeling on it. Do I think we're going to find ourselves in like a worldwide conflict scenario here very soon? Not necessarily, but I'm definitely not ruling it out. And I expect to see it escalate further to the point of reaching that at some time. I really do, actually, at this point. But what I will say is that the things we're talking about tonight are literally going to happen and happening right now, whether or not we understand what may or may not happen during this conflict. So with that being said, okay, we just talked about what's happening in Germany. We know that that's going to be an issue, right? So I don't know. Let's just talk about another country, probably one that's also in a similar area, maybe in Europe. I would say it's a good bet. So here's what else is happening, okay? Now, Spain allows rationing of products in case of market stress to prevent shortages, okay? So the government in Spain basically authorized stores to start rationing and putting limitations on quantities purchased at their grocery stores. Especially because some of them ran out of sunflower oil and milk, right? And this is some info you'll see in tomorrow's video as well. But what I want to say is that we just talked about Germany raising prices 20 to 50% on their food. And then we turn around and have Spain say, well, we're probably going to start rationing food, basically, by putting limitations on it in the grocery stores. And the government came out and literally backed up the grocery store's ability to do so through proclamation, which means the grocery stores are now feeling backed up with the idea they can limit what they have to in order to maintain a level of inventory on the shelf. That being said, how come we're being told over and over again that there's no shortages to be concerned about? Even Germany said so. Well, at least for another year, which I don't think anyone should be concerned about, right? What's wrong with only having a year of food on hand for an entire country? But that being said, they keep trying to take away from this concept. No, there's no shortages. Don't concern yourself with shortages. There's no shortages or supply issues. Yeah, prices are going up 20 to 50%. And yeah, by the way, we're going to have to start rationing, but it's not because of shortages. Don't worry about that, right? This is really starting to bother me because I'm seeing a trend here that keeps pulling itself up. Spain allows rationing for their markets, some of their markets ran out of milk and sunflower oil. Now, sunflower oil we know is used in a lot of different commodities, a lot of different products use it as an ingredient. And of course, that was a huge export from the conflict zone. So that being said, we're running out all over the place. But milk is a little bit different. And somehow Spain's running out of milk. So there's no shortages, but they're running out of stuff. And also they're rationing it. This is stuff you should definitely be thinking of experiencing wherever you are. And many of you I know come from the UK or from Canada or from South America or many other countries or continents. And that being said, you might experience these things before we do in our country, wherever we're from. So if you notice these things happening, please make sure you put it out there and please make sure you let everyone know what you're seeing. Because at the end of the day, this is one of those things that I think we can give each other a heads up on if we're seeing it happen in our area. And we're getting a heads up on it from these other countries right now, which is why we need to be paying attention. Okay. Prepper days. Here's a theory. Starvation and poverty is a great recruiting tool. Military service will clothe and feed you. There's a lot of truth to that, I'm sure. And also I do want to say thanks for the super chats. I might not be seeing them right away the same way as I usually do because of this weird format I'm having to deal with tonight. But by next week, we should be back. So if I don't see your super chat right away, I apologize. I'm trying my best to keep on top of everything, but it's just everything's a little wonky tonight, okay? So now we know Spain is doing these things, okay? Great. And we know that that is an issue, but okay. Now, let's talk about this because it also is relevant to this conversation, okay? I don't know, all these different tabs are closing on me and everything's failing, internet, who knows? We're shutting down, I guess, So that being said, there's a big company here in our country that we have to understand is raising a red flag, is sounding the alarm, okay? And I'm concerned about it, okay? General Mills says that they are facing acute shortages. So General Mills is coming out as one of the largest food producers in the country, the United States anyway, and saying to us directly that, yes, there are shortages. We are experiencing acute shortages, and we're having a hard time meeting demand. And in fact, this article here tells you that they usually fulfill 99% of their demand. And right now, they can only fulfill 70%. And I touch on this in tomorrow's video, but what I want to say about it to you all right here, right now, because first off, you're the best for being here and being amazing. Carl Miller, thank you so much. Marcia Bostetter, thank you as well. Really appreciate it. Keep in mind that 70% of demand is not good, okay? I mean, in school, I believe that was a D, right? Not to mention, we also have a 30% basically drop in capability of one of the largest food producers to meet demand. That means 1/3 of the orders being placed are not being fulfilled. If 1/3 of the food supply suddenly disappeared, how would that affect us? What do you think that would do to the population? And what do you think that would do to society as a whole? We are in a situation now where we have these major corporations having to admit the shortages, no matter how many other sources you read that say there shouldn't be shortages, because we keep seeing that over and over again. But at the same time, the numbers are huge. A 10% drop would be concerning as well. But 30%, almost 1/3 of their orders just not being able to be fulfilled when they're one of the largest food producers is a big deal. And then imagine just applying that to the general food supply and dropping 30% of the overall food supply. And what do you expect to see happen? That is my concern. And it's also something you should be concerned about. I am definitely worried about this. Nate, thank you so much for the super chat. I really appreciate it. Let's see. So, Tony Wilson says 79% is a C, but I'm talking about 70%, 70. So that being said, I think we're looking at some very difficult times ahead. Now, the reason I wanted to bring those things up, okay, and the main reason behind that information specifically was to remind everyone that this is why prepping can become impossible. And what we're doing a lot of times with preparedness. Now, everyone has their own way. Producing is the best way in many ways. It's renewable. You have access to your own calories being produced on a regular basis, and you can create your own food. Great. That's what we want to do, right? But at the end of the day, most people don't have access to that, or at least can't produce enough to fully survive off of it. Joseph says 70% was a C. Not when I was in school. That's how you know I'm old, okay? They switched like a 10% thing. It was like 80 to 90 is a B and whatever. But when I was in school, it was like 94 to 100 was an A. I think 84 to 93 was a B, something like that. Anyway, guess I'm just old. But thanks, Joseph. I appreciate it. That being said, okay, we are going to face a very difficult challenge in trying to continually prepare if we can't afford to prepare or if there's nothing to prepare with. I suggest everybody do their best to grow their own food. I'm not even growing my own food right now, and I have the property to do it, but I have to get everything set up and put into place to be able to sustain that project. Now, that being said, I know most people can't do that. I know that. And so if you're relying on stockpiling food and storing food to deal with an emergency situation, you won't be able to do that at some point if you can't afford it. And what a lot of people do is they take the extra money they have, the disposable income, and they apply it to preparedness. So if you are taking the extra 20% you have, let's see, like 20% is what you have left at the end of the week for your money, and you use that towards preps, and you're buying more food and buying more equipment or whatever else, paying for training, great. But if food goes up 20 to 50% like it's going in Germany, suddenly you don't have that money anymore, because the basic foods you need to just survive through a normal week and for your daily quality of life is going right to food now. And so you suddenly lose that disposable income, that expendable income, that extra money that allows for us to get prepared, to buy the things we need: ammunition, food, clothes, backup power. All that stuff is expensive. All of it comes into play when it comes to being prepared, but we can't afford to buy it if all of our income is going towards just food and groceries. And we have to eat to survive, and we have to be able to maintain a quality of life in normal times in order to anticipate the bad times and be able to be ready for them in a way that keeps us healthy and keeps us strong for that scenario. So this is an issue, because basically it's becoming very difficult to prepare. And every single day, I don't know about you, but I feel the crunch on my wallet. I feel the crunch on what I can afford when I go to the store. I bought a bunch of stuff at Dollar General today, right? And it was food. I just only bought food. There was no like random junk in there. It was all applicable to food consumption. And I spent 70 some dollars there. And I had enough stuff in $70 worth of food that I could literally carry all of it in one trip out to the car without a grocery cart. And while I was carrying all those groceries, first off, I'm that stubborn guy who hates having to do multiple trips, right? I get that. But at the same time, I literally could carry all of my $70 worth of groceries in my arms without a cart or anything. And that just kind of upset me. I kind of realized while I was going to my vehicle, like, dang, I just spent 70 bucks on this and I don't even need a cart. And it's like, that is where we are. So every time I go to the store, I'm feeling that pain and that crunch on my finances, and I'm seeing how that's limiting my ability to spend more on preparedness. And especially when I'm looking into projects like a storm shelter or something to keep my family safe during a tornado or something along those lines, or maybe even something a little bit more grandiose in the sense of needing something underground, that possibility becomes less and less over time if I can't afford to do it. So these are big things that I'm having to, consider. And every time I go grocery shopping, I basically limit my ability to add one more level of preparedness, right? So John Pander says, we just spent $400 yesterday at the store. $400. Could you imagine 4 or 5 years ago what $400 was in a grocery cart? I would assume that was like 2 grocery carts. Not the case anymore at all. And Rip Curl Readiness, Northern Girl Hobbies, Prepper Now, all of you mods, thank you so much for being here, by the way. I never want to forget you guys. Exile Reviews, thank you so much. I just want everyone to be aware. I always appreciate you guys. And sometimes I just get so riled up and so on topic that I forget to say hi and thank you. So thank you so much. All right, now let's get in the chat for a second real quick. Charles Wagner. Oh no, my prepperinos. I like that. I'm not sure why, but I think it could have a good accent to it and make it sound nice. Let's see. Mad Max says copper and lead. You can never have enough. And honestly, like I've been trying to get more just because I don't anticipate it becoming suddenly affordable overnight. Let's see. Soda Popinski says we sold one of our cars 2019, bought new for 28, sold it for 26.3 last month. And that is crazy, but also happening a lot. And in fact, I have a 2014 truck, and because it's got low mileage on it, I get phone calls from random numbers trying to buy it from me all the time because they can resell it in like a second. So it's just crazy how fast this is all happening. Now, John Mack just spent 600 on silver. Good for you, silver. I mean, yeah, if 600 on it, a few years ago would have been awesome. But at the same time, 600 on it now still probably worth more than the cash we have in our pockets right this second, pretty soon here, right? Okay, moving on from there. We also have other things to talk about. And that's why I wanted to touch base on that all real quick, is getting prepared now and avoiding that impossibility of preparedness is really what matters. We have to do what we can while we can, and we have to accept the fact that there's a possible point in time where we can't prepare anymore, or we can't at least, physically prepare in the sense of additional supplies or additional equipment, because those things are tangible but require money or require some form of labor to acquire, and we might not be able to execute those plans if things go to the route of A, what's happening in the conflict zone over in Eastern Europe, or B, if things are so expensive in our usual daily lives, revolving around utilities, fuel, and groceries, that we no longer can afford to get anything additional from our money. And that's a big deal for me, and that's a big deal for all of you, I assume, as well. We need to be able to move forward in our preparedness. But man, that storm shelter is becoming more and more expensive every single day just because of how much more I'm having to spend on groceries. Now, let's see here. One thing I want to touch base on is also this escalation, okay? I wanted to kind of just remind everybody that things aren't just cooling off. And this escalation is keeping things moving into that negative territory. And at the same time, because of the escalation, we have to be more and more prepared. So this is a really weird dichotomy, a really weird issue for us to be in, where things are getting too expensive, but things are also getting more urgent in the sense of what could happen here very soon. And it's hard to balance how I can afford groceries while still considering what's really going on overseas that can literally pull us into a very dangerous scenario at any point in time. So that being said, let's talk about some of those indicators right now, just to be on the same page and to have some other ideas about, what's happening around the world. It's a lot happening. Okay. Now, basically, the Baltics cut off Russian gas, okay? But Germany and EU face struggle because they just still need the gas. Now, these tiny Baltic countries, which nothing against them, but they're small, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, said we're done with this gas, right? So this is going to escalate things one way or the other. This has a financial and economic impact on multiple countries, which means that those countries are all affected by this, regardless of what other countries decide. And then that escalates into something, regardless of what it is. But I think many of us could easily argue that the events of 2020 that put us into a financial situation that we're in right now globally probably helped push us into the situation we're seeing unfold in Eastern Europe right now. And so these moves are all going to have consequences at some point in time. Now, what everyone's saying is, look, 40% of this energy comes from Russia. Okay, so obviously that's a big deal, and these countries moving away from it is something. But what inherent costs are they taking on in order to do so, and what risks are they taking as well? Because this is still a escalation towards a certain country that has a lot of power that is very close to these nations and has an interest in those nations not necessarily being sovereign, right? So I see this being a poke the bear situation, quite literally in many ways. Now, understand that there's a lot of different pieces of this puzzle, okay? And we can't expect this to just change everything overnight. But what we can expect is that these moves from these countries will put a little more fuel on the fire, one way or the other. And if other larger countries with larger market shares of how much of this product they need in order to sustain their normal daily lives of their populations start moving away from, that gas supplier as well, suddenly I think we're going to see more aggressive tactics come into play, because now nobody's playing nice and we're already pushing that envelope with the sanctioning and everything else that's going on. So that's an example of escalation, in my opinion. Like I said, not everything is going to be easily deciphered during these times. I think we can all agree on that, but we can at least take apart some of the information and then apply it to our preparedness and say, okay, this is something that I could see pushing things into a worse territory, which gives me more motivation or more urgency to continually prepare. Don't worry about that ad, because I definitely don't look up that kind of stuff, YouTube. But what I'll say, is Daily Mail, get out of here. You don't need to notify me anything. All right, so this is another escalation, and I think we've heard this before on other preparedness channels, but I wanted to mention it tonight in the stream. Just the idea of this is putting a strain on any possibility of diplomacy. And look, is there a diplomatic solution out of this whole situation? I don't know, probably not. But what I will say is that there is a lot of saber rattling and a lot of escalative tactics happening that are pushing some countries to have to act in a way they might not have otherwise. Okay, so, and I do want to say, let's see, somebody just mentioned construction materials, a 2x4 being $35. I might have missed the name on that, which I believe I did. But what I can say is yes, that is insane. And we are seeing a lot of that still when it comes to lumber and everything else. But it's old news now, so it's not reported on as much anymore. Now, if this was to happen, if there was to be a situation where tactical nuclear weaponry was allowed to be positioned in Poland, right? That's an escalation. Now, I don't care if it's strategically sensible or anything else like that, but I will say that it is a major issue. If we were to take that that advice or I guess suggestion and run with it, I could see that escalation becoming very problematic very fast. Do I expect that to happen? Probably not. But what I will say is that just it being offered and being put on the table is problematic enough. And then you take the whole situation revolving around the fact that that is one of the countries that is probably the most vulnerable to additional aggression, as well as even maybe an accidental act of aggression, then we're putting ourselves in a very dangerous territory. And basically Poland is saying, hey, we'll be the guys for you if you really want us to be. And I don't know if that's a good idea, because honestly, I don't want to see this thing get worse, because if it gets worse for all of us. And it's already going to get worse in many ways. Mark Fallops, thank you so much for being here. Always coming in and supporting the channel. I do appreciate that. And Jacob Metcalf, I affiliate with EcoFlow. I affiliate with their generator system, so if that's something you're interested in. I can drop a link here in the chat at some point for you. But I think there's a lot of great generator options out there, and I think that there's a lot of different financial benefits to different options depending on your budget and your situation. So just make sure you do your research and get what's best for you. I just decided to work with them because I think they had some innovative products that are very user-friendly. But at the same time, I don't work with 20 companies like that just because I don't think you can. I feel like that's, I'm kind of like a brand guy. I like to stick with somebody and kind of run with it. But there might be some change in that here soon. You never know, because I've been dabbling around with some 6 Sours lately. Let's just throw it out there like that. Now, okay. Let's see. Northern Girl Hobbies. The description. You know what? So Northern Girl Hobbies, I usually do that. But the big issue tonight was that I tried this new format and it did not work the way I wanted it to. And so that was the problem there. So I apologize for making your job harder. But here's that link in case you guys are interested in backup solar power. I appreciate it. Now, let's see here. So Charles Wagner says a 10-foot by 4-foot piece of plywood at Home Depot is running $75 per sheet. That is insane, because I remember picking those up for 10 by 4. I want to say I'd spend like $11, maybe 13 at the most, depending on the thickness and the type of board it was. But either way, that's huge. Now, let's talk about another escalative situation, okay? And I'm using large words like escalative because it makes me sound more intelligent. So that way you guys think the things that I'm saying actually have some, relevance, I guess. So I hope it's working. I don't know. You tell me in the chat. But Finland is in a strange situation, okay? And here's something else we have to keep in mind. Finland has been planning for a situation like this for a very long time. And I'm not 100% sure, but what I'm seeing there, are those FALs maybe? I'm not sure. You guys tell me in the chat if those are FALs in that picture. FALs, obviously. But, I mean, they might just be strange looking 74s or maybe even Galils. I'm not sure. But either way, what I want to say is that Finland's been training for this for like ever, right? They're just ready for anything because they neighbor that country and they know that they're aggressive at times and they know that this could be a situation at some point in time. All buildings above a certain size have to have their own bomb shelters, and the rest of the population can use underground car parks, ice rinks, swimming pools, which stand ready to be converted into evacuation centers. Okay, keep in mind that countries in Eastern Europe, especially Russia, have spent millions and probably billions of dollars and years and years and years and decades of preparing their populations for the possible outbreak of a nuclear conflict. And I can't say the same thing for the United States, and I don't think you can say it either. But those countries have literally put investing time and money into that exact concept because they know it's a reality, they know it's a possibility, and they want to protect their citizens. So that being said, just keep that in mind, because the fact that these countries are so willing to do these things is a big deal. Let's see, Peepaw Mike. No, I don't think I saw Rustic Designs message. I apologize. So if somebody sees that or can pull it up again, that'd be cool. But I don't think I saw that. So I apologize. Like I said, I'm trying to keep up with everything, but it's just a different format tonight, and I'm definitely not having a good time. Arkansas Whoop-Ass says, don't mess with Finland. Yeah, they're well trained. They got a lot of stuff figured out, and they are ready to go, especially for protecting their citizens. But that being said, okay, there's a big push in their country right now to join NATO. And obviously, we know that would be another escalation. But even just Finland getting more trained and getting more hardened for this possibility of conflict is something to keep in mind, because all of that in many ways is its own form of escalation. Okay, they have strategic stockpiles. They have crisis management preparations ready to go for all of this stuff. And look, Finland's ability to call on its biggest companies at any time to tackle a national crisis, a huge advantage as it harnesses the market economy for a prepper society. Prepper society doesn't sound so bad now, does it? Okay. Let's see. Okay, Rustic Design says, I'm a garbage man. I've been taking 24,000 chickens to the dump a day. Day 3 now. Yes, so there is a lot going on when it comes to what's happening with poultry. So thanks for giving us that information. Thank you for that intel. And keep in mind that this is another factor that things like animal sickness and things like culling of herds and everything else happens generally anyway, right? But during times of food shortage, scarcity, and supply chain issues, it compounds the already existing problems. So what people are failing to do in many instances when, digesting this information is adding it all together as one big problem rather than just seeing as separate issues. So people will say things like, oh, that's not a big deal. It happens all the time. Okay, great. But it's happening now when all these other things are happening. And that's what people really need to be considering during these times. You have to take the context of where we are right now and apply it to the things that are occurring and realize that, man, this is actually getting pretty dicey with all of these additional problems showing up. Now, let's see. Prepper Now says Keystone Beef and Costco Chicken for me. And I think that's great. Now, Samantha V says playing a basic playlist of basic prepping items is great. Keep it going at Magic Prepper. Well, I'm glad you find it useful. And from time to time, I try to give everybody ideas that are practical, maybe not so exciting, but just some things to consider that a lot of people maybe don't focus on very much because there's so much happening in the world. And I just want you guys to be able to, keep your options available. And I think during these times of extreme urgency, that it's easy to over focus or hyper focus on some of the more fearful information that's out there. And I try to take a break from that if possible and show you guys some other ideas or options during those times. I think it's very important. Alaska Prepper, good to see you, Rudy. Thank you so much for being here. And guys, just so you know, Alaska Prepper is a great guy, great channel. If you don't know about him and somehow you know about me, I'm not sure how that happened, but make sure you check out Rudy. And if you're worried about stockpiling food and getting on top of what's happening in these food shortages, he has a lot of great advice and a lot of great content surrounding those exact situations that we're discussing tonight. So make sure you check him out. Rudy's a great guy as well. Even if you just want to support him for being a good person, I think you're definitely on track with him. Okay. So let's move on from there, even though Finland is in the process of creating a prepper society because of their proximity to this country that's creating a lot of the issues right now. We're over here just, duck and cover under your school desk, right? I mean, even the fallout shelters in my area, most of them are decrepit or no longer in use. And even in my town, which I am like in a weird spot, which is like a little cushion zone between what would be like a heavily targeted area and what would be the fallout from the heavily targeted area in Montana. So it's kind of a weird spot for me. But that being said, my locality does not have a functioning fallout shelter. And it's like, you think we would based on our location and based on the fact that it's not that expensive to create something like that for a city, but we don't have one. So, I mean, that's just how it is in America compared to Finland, who's over here building their swimming pools with the idea of being able to be a bomb shelter. Now, Liam Sadi. Hopefully I said that right. Lahim Sadi, I'll say. For those with limited budget and bad credit, how can they secure rural property? That seems to be the best prep source, asking for a friend. So limited budget and a bad credit. Well, let me give you a quick anecdote on that, okay? One, your bad credit is something that can be fixed, but you need somebody to probably help you with it. So keep that in mind. It's not a bad idea to reach out to somebody who's a professional in that aspect and help you develop that to the point where you can at least qualify. And two, do your research. Okay, here I'll give you my concept around that. I bought my property using what was available to me via the state, and the state offered a huge down payment for my property just because it's a program they had, and it was a program that I said, well, can I use that program? And I was told yes. So basically, the state gave me a big chunk of change to buy this property, and out of pocket, I didn't have to come too far out of pocket to make this happen. I spent more money making sure my credit was in order and making sure everything looked good in that department than I did on the actual down payment of my home, because I use state and federal programs that are available, because you know what? It's our money anyway. It's all taxpayer money. And for me, it's going to something that makes sense versus a lot of the crap they wasted on. So that to me is what I did. Yeah, you might not want to be involved with the government for this or that or whatever it is. At the end of the day, it's money that's out there and available, and I'm going to capitalize on it if I can. And at the same time, just be aware that just because one financer tells you no, does not mean that that everyone else will. And it took me being very pushy and persistent and working with 3 different mortgage companies to finally get approved, because it's just hard. Things are very difficult in the sense of qualification, and don't take no for an answer. So that's my 2 cents there. And look, if you are looking for a way to, get into a rural environment and you want help with that process, obviously I have a sponsorship with fleethecity.com. Yes, they've been controversial in the past, and yes, they have some interesting stuff surrounding them. But at the end of the day, what they are trying to do is put together a package for people who are trying to get out of urban areas and bring them into Idaho or Montana, relocate you and get you into a home that's more self-sufficient, more self-sustaining, and outside of the chaos of metropolitan areas. So I work with them for right now, and I'm hoping to hear some good feedback from people who may have actually got some successful experiences with them. Now, one reason I really was interested in working with them is because they're working on building a self-sustaining community of preparedness-minded individuals in Montana at some point in time. So I think that that's a cool idea and something I may or may not become involved with. I don't know. I'll let you guys know. But what I want to say is that to me, that makes it so you have a neighborhood of the same type of people trying to be prepared, self-sufficient, probably well-armed and everything else related to that. And it's hard to build a MAG or a community. I'm sure you guys are very aware of that, because I've tried very hard and it is difficult. And mine's growing, but it's still relatively spread out because of just how my area works. But if all of my neighbors were prepared people, that would be a pretty interesting situation. So fleethecity.com, I work with them. That's another way for you to get into a different home or something like that, if that's what your goal is. So, Salid, I believe it was. Sorry if I already forgot how to say your name, because I tried really hard the first time. Oh, Lahim Sadi. Sorry. That's what another way you could at least look into. At the end of the day, don't take no for an answer from a financer, and look at your state or the states you might move to and get those government programs and put that money in your pocket that you probably paid into anyway. And that's exactly what I did. And now I have a home that the state of North Dakota helped finance, to be completely honest with you. So sorry, I didn't, maybe that's too much personal information, but I really want to help everybody do the best they can. And if you guys have questions like that, I don't mind answering to try to help you. Now, what I will say is, and by the way, Fleet City, they're only doing Idaho and Montana. So I just want to mention that, because they can't really help you with anywhere else, and I don't want you to, waste your time either. Now, let's talk about this this next impending situation. And this is something that really bothers me. It should bother you, and it concerns me, being someone who's a relatively social figure on a social media platform. And this is happening, and it's something that we definitely need to be concerned with, because we know how Western society works. Everybody wants to be the next big story. Everybody wants to do the thing, right? And Canada is just certainly trying to do the thing. So keep in mind, this internet censorship bill in Canada, okay, BC11 or Bill C11, okay, is an issue. And it is something that I believe the Parliament is debating at this point in time. But what we have to be concerned about here is that it's basically part of their Broadcasting Act being amended to allow their regulatory system to regulate the internet the same way it does television and radio. And they're putting things in this bill that basically make exceptions for social media to be managed versus how things have been done in the past related to TV, radio, or something along those lines. And what I'm concerned about here is that if a bill like this gets passed, and if it does its job, okay, when I say job, I mean that very figuratively. But what I want to say is that basically they are trying to make it so you can get rid of all of the bad stuff you don't want people saying, all of the misinformation you don't want people saying, and everything else that could, be against what the flow is basically from the government being said. And they can regulate it out of the way because, it's coming from an unverified source. And a lot of what they're trying to do is make an exception for, for example, they'll make an exception for Facebook to say, hey, look, Facebook is the social media platform. Facebook is not responsible for the content that's posted on it because that is being posted by individuals or corporations. However, we then have to step in and help Facebook take care of that information that's coming in that's not right, or take care of the speech that's not allowed, or anything else that's incendiary in their opinion, because, those sources are not verifiable. And that is what I think we should definitely be concerned about, because this is happening. They are literally discussing this, and this is something they've been trying to discuss or put into place ever since last year, and it keeps getting stalled for obvious reasons because it's terrible legislation and it shouldn't happen. But yet they keep bringing it back up, and they're going to keep doing that over and over and over again until they finally get their way. And then I can see something like this happening in places like the UK and the United States. And of course, the UK has a lot of censorship already, and so does the United States. But we are luckily, in an area where we have less, but it's getting worse every day, of course. And I know a lot of people will ask me, well, why do you, still operate on this platform? Obviously censorship is bad and we don't want to deal with it. And look, I'm a very pro First Amendment person. However, this platform is what gets the largest reach. It's what takes care of the ability to network with the most people. And it allows me to broadcast information to the largest group all at once. Okay. And yeah, you want to say there's a monetary incentive here? Of course there is. So don't let anybody lie to you. Yes, there is. But at the end of the day, the reach is so much bigger, and there is no other platform that even comes close to competing with it. So I can deal with the fact that this private entity has its rules that I can try to obey by. And some of those rules have gotten better, especially in the realm of firearms. They're allowing a lot more content related to firearms being monetized now. And that's due to the fact that their rules didn't make sense. But the reason the rules didn't make sense is because the people who were creating them did not know anything about firearms. So they are actually working with people in the firearms YouTube community now to try to make things more available to people who want to make that type of content. So these are big deals, okay? Mark Olson, remember, folks, make small meals. There may be no refrigeration. That's a great point. Now, the censorship thing bothers me. You should keep an eye on it and just be prepared, especially if you're in Canada, to, I don't know, maybe not have access to me at some point. These are things you have to really consider. And at any time it limits your access to people like myself or anyone else in the preparedness community, like Alaska Prepper, Northern Girl Hobbies, Prepper Now, Rip Curl Readiness, Gray Man Prepping, any of the other great mods we have around here, and other great channels I'm sure that are in the chat as well, that is a problem because you're limited on the information you're allowed to receive now. And that is not where we want to be. So the other thing I want to talk about when it comes to what was just said here in the chat, okay, is that the small meals thing and the refrigeration thing. I want you guys to keep this in mind because this actually came up today. I had a conversation with someone who's local to me, and a very helpful guy gave me some advice about some of the like phone line setup and everything in my area and the way that it works in my home. And it was great information. So I really appreciated that. But what he, alluded to too was like, are your backup generators ready for the ability to like power your fridge and your heavy appliances and stuff? And right now, one of my backup generators, like my EcoFlow Delta, could actually power my fridge for a certain amount of time, especially if the compressor didn't have to kick on too often. But I don't plan on maintaining large appliances during a like full grid down scenario. And I don't think that's a smart thing to plan for. So I do actually hesitate to stock up in a freezer or in a refrigerator on food. Anything that requires power is a possible fail point, right? And even if you have the ability to power those items, like, well, I have a giant propane generator on my property that will last 60 days, so I don't care. great. That's probably a great thing to have. Or maybe you have a solar system and you're not worried about it. But just keep in mind, those electrical components still have a failure rate no matter what. They're made by human beings, so mistakes are made and things happen. Your refrigerator itself has a fail rate. It has the ability to break. The compressor can go out. There's a lot of things that can happen. All of your heavy appliances could possibly just break, not just not be powered. And so I don't necessarily plan my preparations around the idea of refrigeration or freezing. I just don't. If I'm going to preserve meat from like a hunt or something along those lines, I'll be trying to probably dry it, either freeze dry it, I don't know, salt preserve it, pressure jar it, whatever it is. And Alaska Prepper has a lot of great videos on pressure canning and stuff, especially with meat. So there you go. There's a lot of options there. But I don't want to rely on refrigeration as my go-to. So I definitely caution people, and I do get a lot of people to reach out to me. They ask me questions, which is totally fine. But they ask me, hey, I have 2 refrigerators. I got a chest freezer. They're stocked full to the brim. How do I make sure that their power doesn't go down? And I give the best advice that I can. But in many ways, I generally still say, but I would also suggest probably just stocking more, shelf-stable foods and stocking more foods that don't require refrigeration, because that might not work. You might not have power, but you definitely might not have a refrigerator. And replacing that refrigerator is going to be harder than replacing the power source in many ways, especially if you have multiple backup generators. So I don't plan on refrigeration, okay? And that's just my my thought process, okay? And look, Alaska Prepper says if you have lots of meat in the freezer, try to have enough jars to pressure can the meat before it spoils. 100%. But that's just what I suggest. I don't like relying on heavy appliances. And even when it comes like washing machines and stuff, I think we should all have other ways to do that. Obviously, you can dry your clothes by hanging them on a line. Winter here might make that a little more difficult, but you can still do it even indoors if you need to. There's a lot of ways around it, of course. But all I'm trying to say is that planning on your food storage as being dependent on refrigeration is not the best idea. So always try to go with shelf-stable, preserved foods that will last a long time without any refrigeration or anything required to keep them from spoiling, and you'll probably find yourself in a better situation in the long term. But at the end of the day, you got to do what's best for you. And maybe you have a certain diet. Maybe you are on a paleo diet or something. I don't know. But all I'm saying is that I would suggest swaying away from that concept. Okay. Now, let's see. Let's jump into the chat here for a second. So Tokay is now networking with Armed and Prepped in New York, asking where in New York. And that's exactly what you guys should be doing. I really appreciate the networking. And I do want you guys, if you're able to, jump inside the Discord, come hang out, talk. We have lots of great conversations. I ask advice all the time, especially in the firearms department, because it's a good time there. But honestly, the Discord is a great place to network. We have channels for every state, every country. And I just want you guys to keep in mind that, yes, Discord could easily shut us down one day or something like that. So please try to follow the rules, because it's still probably the best networking tool we have access to in the sense of the grand scheme of things. But it's naive to assume that most of these tech companies don't prefer us not to operate on them in the way that we do. But at the end of the day, if we're following the certain set of rules that the server has, there's really no reason they can shut us down. And if they decide to, then we'll figure out and adapt from there. Either way, use this time wisely, network the best you can, but establish real connections within those networking channels, so that way you can still have a way to communicate even if that happens. If Discord gets taken down, you guys have each other's phone numbers or emails or whatever else it might be. And I think that's a good idea. And honestly, we're getting a lot of great conversation, but a lot of great networking happening in that channel. If you guys are in North Dakota, make sure you join that channel in the Discord. I'm going to set up like a hangout meetup in North Dakota at some point this summer. It may or may not involve going to a range or something, but I want to, get together with some like-minded people in my state and just kind of talk about things, get some contingency plans in place. Just go over some basic stuff and probably more so have just a good time and get to know each other more personally. Because honestly, networking and relying on neighbors is going to be huge. And I know a lot of people scoff at some of my ideas about networking and reaching out. And I do come from a little bit of a different perspective. I'm publicly known on this channel. I am publicly out there as somebody who's in the preparedness community. I have a lot of my firearms and stuff on videos on this channel. So I have less OPSEC and less secrecy than most other people are privy to. And when you get recognized in a town of 2,000 people by somebody that watches your YouTube channel, it kind of shows you that you're going to run into people who know who you are at some point or another. So I might be coming from some of my ideas from a perspective of OPSEC's out the window anyway for me. But at the end of the day, relying on those networks and those communities might be the only way to survive any kind of a long-term situation. And I think that survival could be very important at that point in time. It takes a village, they say, right? And I honestly believe that if you can self-sustain you and your family just by yourselves, I think that's huge. But then you also still have to consider security. And if you don't have enough people to deal with the other people that may or may not be a threat, it doesn't matter if you can grow your own food or run your own power. Those people might be able to grow their own food and run their own power at that point in time if you're not ready to go and don't have enough people on your side. So, and that's an unfortunate thing we have to really consider. And I don't like talking about it all the time because it's kind of a scary thought process. And I don't want to actually be in a situation where that's reality, where I have to worry about, larger groups of people being able to do what they will because I don't have as many people on my side. But that is a real concern and something we definitely need to consider. So make sure you have those different plans in place and make sure you're doing what you can to reach out and network and try to meet the people in your area that are going to help harden you towards any kind of a long-term SHTF event before prepping becomes impossible. Because to circle back, which I can't even say anymore without feeling bad about it, we can now understand that there will be a point in time where prepping won't be possible any longer, and you will be relying on your prepping instead of adding to it. And at that point in time, we're going to have hard times. And Rudy can tell you in the chat right now, I'm sure he can attest to this, but the food you buy now will be lots cheaper than it will be tomorrow. And we all might be eating our prepper food, even though it's not full escalated SHTF, just because we can't afford groceries anymore. And you know what? At the end of the day, that's its own version of SHTF, and we can't afford to prep, and we can't afford groceries. Good thing we can still eat. And that's a big deal, and that's something we got to do, okay? Yardbird says the paparazzi are on my tail. I hope not, because I don't know how I deal with, large groups of people with cameras. It kind of freaks me out a little bit. But, I'll do my best to stay gray man and just pretend I'm Dave Grohl's little brother and hide in the background or something. So, all right, well. Oh, cute one. You didn't say that. Don't say that about me. Don't attach my name to that, okay? Yeah, all right, whatever. It's fine. Anyway, Carl Miller says food riots. I think it's possible, especially in urban areas. And if things keep going in the direction they're going. Can you imagine if a large metropolitan area actually started handing out food vouchers, okay? And then imagine if those vouchers were only allowed to acquire you limited purchases in the sense of rationing. Okay, well, I think there's going to be certain groups of people who aren't going to abide by that. Or vouchers will probably be another form of currency like you see in, I don't know, prison. And that's going to cause its own interesting black market of many, many problems. So this is where we're at. This is where we need to be. And I appreciate every single one of you being here every Monday. It's the best. You guys are amazing. I don't want to do anything else on my Monday nights. And I feel this obligation to be here. That's so strong that even though there's other things I got to do in the sense of preparedness, I got a lot to do, man. I'm busy. But this hour on a Monday night, totally worth it. 100% hands down. Not going to change anything about it. So without saying anything else about that, and with a big thank you to all of you for being here, I am going to say that that's it for Magic Prepper.